Hello and welcome to the Gunsmoke Fancast, a podcast devoted to the television show Gunsmoke. We will discuss the radio show, television show, and the movies of this iconic television show. You can join in on the discussion at Gunsmoke Fancast listener group on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Gunsmoke Fancast and see what episodes we'll be talking about. And you can interact with the show by posting on the episode post. And that's very important. If you guys want to get involved with the show, please post on the episode post. Usually there's a YouTube link or something to the episode we're going to discuss. And I'll be trying to give you the next episode on the Gunsmoke Fancast listener group all the time. Of course, my thought was to make this as interactive podcast as I possibly can for the fans of Gunsmoke and people who just want to listen to the Gunsmoke Fancast. This is a podcast that is part of the Final Shot Saloon studio and is part of the Western podcast, Final Shot Saloon, found on iTunes and Stitcher under Final Shot Saloon Studio. I'm just going to get right into it. Don't have much Gunsmoke news except the 60th anniversary of the television show is going to be in Dodge City, and we talked about that last week. I'm hoping in another few weeks we're going to get more information on who are the actors that will be there. So I'm just going to get right into the show and the episode. This was called Cara. The opening scene, he's walking through the Boot Hill, and he tells of how a man comes out west and dreams of a new beginning, and he gets lost in violence, that we burn his name into a marker, and then we forget. Unless it's a woman, and a woman whose life was once part of yours, and you cannot forget that that's a concern for Matt Dillon, not the U.S. Marshal. That was kind of a very cool way to start this, because we find out later him and Cara did have a relationship way back when. I think they said 12 years. And this whole thing was really a cool episode, and we'll just get right into it. First, we see a lady laying down, and the hotel manager's yabbering, and Doc is in the room bandaging her up. We kind of can tell that she must have gotten hurt by what the hotel manager and Doc kind of go back and forth. You kind of tell that she tried to commit suicide. And I would think back in the day of this time period of even television, I don't know if suicide was such a thing you hear about. So I this is kind of why I picked it, and maybe it was, but and when Doc mentions that he has to tell the marshal, she says his name, Matt, and says, please tell him Cara wants to see him. Now, Doc heads over to the office, and we meet Matt in the office, and he tells Matt that a lady named Cara wants to see him, and that she tried to commit suicide, and she didn't do a very good job at it, and she went down her arm and not across the wrist, which again, I was kind of shocked that they even said that. Anyway, and she left the door open, and she left it unlocked, and she cried for help, which to me, it sounds more like a cry for help and a suicide, or to get Matt's attention. And we do find out that she really just wanted Matt's attention. Matt heads over to the hotel, which I thought this was a really cool shot. If you watch the episode, it's far back. You see kind of the main street of Dodge, people meandering, and he's just walking over to the hotel. I thought it was a cool shot. So he enters the room, and they kind of discuss about how what they how she knew he was in Dodge. And she heard in St. Louis that he was actually the marshal of Dodge. And then she says she got all dressed up and just couldn't face him. The marshal, wanting just to cut to the chase, says, "What can I do for you, Cara?" And she tells him she wants to stay here for a while and that she would like a job, or that there's plenty of saloons around. Well, Matt says he's going to try to help the best he can. With that being said, it seemed very weird. I don't know if weird's a good name, but you could kind of tell that she was up to something up to this point. And we kind of can tell that Matt's not really buying into it, in my opinion. As Matt is leaving the hotel room, she asks Matt if he is ashamed of her, and he says, "Why? I've lived 12 more years since then." So we know that 12 years have passed. They obviously had the relationship. They had some growing up. And then we come to my favorite scene probably of this episode. We see that he headed over to the Long Branch, and he's trying to convince Kitty of helping her out. And really, Kitty's not having any of it. A, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's late at night for her. And she didn't really want to hear of his old flame. They have a discussion, and Kitty isn't wanting any of this, like I said. And we find that Cara wanted to make him a rancher, or make a rancher out of him. And Kitty just laughs, and she says, why didn't she? And he says that he always felt that he had something to prove. We got a little history of Marshall Dillon on that one. There was a chance that it could have been Rancher Dillon, but he always felt like he had to prove something. And I think we see that almost in I think we saw that in the very first episode. Him not laying down, him not making it a week. He had to confront Gant. And I thought that was a very telling little part there. Because it seemed like to me that he always had something to prove. Not only because he was a marshal, but it was probably a legal way to prove that he had something to prove. Then we see Matt Dillon and the sheriff walk into the office. I forgot the sheriff's name, but the sheriff decides that he's going to sit down with Chester and Matt and have a little breakfast. The sheriff tells of a bank robber known as Jack Tolliver, and that he's back in Kansas and he's hitting banks and he's headed south. There's apparently a few of them, or I don't want to say posse because that seems big, but he has a few people with him. And we find out nobody knows what Tolliver looks like. And Tolliver sends a scout out to the town before he robs it. And this was priceless. Matt asked what does the fellow look like that he sends out first? And the sheriff says it's not a man, it's a woman, 5'7", brown eyes, and yellow hair, and very pretty, and a great actress. Does that sound like anybody? I'm thinking Cara. And it was funny because now Matt, as he's eating and he's telling him the 5'7", brown eyes, yellow hair, and very pretty, he instantly goes to Cara, and he gets this look on his face that is just fantastic. And then we find out Tolliver has actually killed 3 men. And Chester says after the sheriff has left that it sounds like he's describing Miss Cara. Now, after this, Matt decides he's going to visit Cara, and it's kind of he kind of questions her. He finds out there's a little misstep in her St. Louis story, that she just was going through, and it sounded like she was there, and that's how she found out that he was Marshal of Dodge. So she's kind of, he's not buying it, and she thinks that he is, he's on to her a little bit, but he changes the story. She changes her story. Then the marshal tells Cara that she's in good hands because he has to go out of town for a few days. She asks if he could stay just a few more days, maybe a week, and then we move over to the Long Branch. At that point, we actually see that Marshall Dillon is actually kind of onto her at that point, in my opinion. And then Chester asks if he found out anything, and he tells him that he's been setting things up. She has been setting things up for Tolliver, and she needs a week. So in other words, he has to stay there for a week. And Chester says, "This must be tough for you." And Matt says, "No, I just remember the men that Tolliver shot down." We actually go back to Miss Kitty and Marshall Dillon sitting at a table. And this is kind of a jealousy thing when I saw it. I thought it was kind of jealousy. And another, I guess you'd say, hint towards their relationship. We see Kitty telling Matt that she has nothing to offer him, as in Cara has nothing to offer him. We see that Matt hasn't told Kitty a thing of the setup of Tolliver, and that he's keeping it very quiet. I liked how he played it, and he also even told her that he's going to be taking care of it, and I thought that was excellent. We see that Matt and Chester are now outside the office, and then Kitty shows up asking for $20, and he makes a little joke of people usually put a little honey in their voice when they are asking for a loan. Kitty says it's not for her, it's for Cara. When Cara asked Kitty for the money, Kitty said she didn't have any, and she pretty much said Matt's good for it. Matt figures it's time that Cara is going to make her move, and Chester should go follow her. And then Chester finds her at the train depot, and she's getting a ticket to St. Louis. Chester runs to the bank where Matt is talking to the banker, and Matt goes running to the depot and finds Cara. He's asked her why she wasn't going to leave without saying goodbye, and tells her that he knows she bought a train ticket to St. Louis. She finally just kind of cuts right to the chase and says that he's been onto her all along, and Matt says he has to hold her. And then we find out Tolliver is the one leaving on the train, and Cara talked him out of robbing, especially with Matt as sheriff. Well, then we find out that she loves Tolliver, and then the train starts moving. Matt and Chester go running after the train, and it's kind of a funny moment because you see Chester with his gimp leg hop the train like that. It was just funny. And they both get on the train, and then Matt tells Chester that she wanted the marshal on the train while Tolliver gets ready to rob the bank. He was going to ride the train 10 miles and get off at the closest ranch and get some horses. Again, shows how smart Marshall Dillon is, and how he knows how these people play. And so he just kind of made it, played along and put up the ruse that he was gone, and now we're going to get horses and we're going to come back. So then the next scene is we see both Chester and Matt in the bank, and that Mr. Bunkin took the money home, and there's only a few $100s in the bank. Then we see Tolliver and Cara head to the bank, and another man. And so when they get into the bank, they bust in the door, and they get in the bank. Matt says, "Hold it." And, of course, they draw down on him, and one gets shot, and Tolliver runs out the door. And he actually grabs Cara and gets behind her and tells Matt that he'll shoot her in the back. Well, then Cara runs off, and Tulliver shoots her while the marshal shoots him. And this was kind of a, I don't know if you want to say sad moment. I don't know if you want to say glad moment, but Cara crawls over to him and pretty much says she can't believe that that she still loved him, or this is how it was going to go. And she pretty much dies on him. Pretty much then Marshall Dillon asks Chester if he'd take care of things. Like I said, this was kind of one of those episodes that I was actually surprised that it was kind of the suicide part of it. I was kind of surprised for being at that time. Let's go to the Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke Fancast listener group. They talked about Ross Patterson and Goldie actually talked about the scene where Matt and Kitty were at the table, and Kitty says, I bet she can teach me a few tricks. And then Goldie was funny. She put, I bet you she couldn't. Kitty saw it all, heard it all, knew it all. She was one hell of a woman. And I agree. Very, very, knew her way around town. And then Ross, I hope I'm saying your name right, said she liked it. She liked the episode. You could tell that Matt really loved her at one point. You could see the disappointment in her face when her last act before she dies is to crawl to the man who shot her, and that she said that she couldn't help herself. When I saw that, I was kind of taken aback a little bit, because after him sticking the gun in her back, she was still willing to roll over there. I wanted to kind of quick find I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing this on the show, but I thought there was well, I'll do it for next time, guys. I'll get all the information on the Gunsmoke 60th. I'll get that all ready. I apologize. I thought it was... We have... excuse me. And if you're interested, the Gunsmoke Fan Club, which is huge now, before this podcast, before the Gunsmoke Fancast listener group, there was only a handful of us that were on this page, and I think we are up to 2,000. We're up to 2,000, and 2,157 people we are at. So go like the Gunsmoke Fan Club, and please go like the Gunsmoke Fancast listener group, and please discuss the episode we're going to be on. And I usually like I said, I usually throw in your comments and questions. And so I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for posting. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now.